Okay, so we're going to continue from where we left off in Pirkei Avot, Pirkei Mishnah Zayin. Now the Mishnah lists 7 items, right? We began the Pirkei by discussing items that come in groups of 10. Mishnah now discusses a different kind of category that involves 7. Very interesting ideas here, something completely different than what we're used to. Nonetheless, in wanting us to recognize certain important features in people, in wanting us to be able to recognize certain virtues in human, in personality and midot chachamim, elaborate a little bit about what is welcome and what is not welcome. What is something that we should pursue and what we should not pursue? What is something that we should strive for to develop and something that we should be careful with? When it comes to tchunot hanefesh, we're going to be talking about certain characteristics, certain, I guess you can say, ways of behavior in dealing with other people and in dealing with any subject matter that we are learning. There are certain criteria or certain conditions that reflect a lot about a person. You can get to know a person in a few moments in noticing certain things about them. Certain things stand out at times when we're having a discussion, when people are learning together, people express themselves, and once people begin to talk, they pretty much give it away. You know, when a person is quiet, he can appear to be a very intelligent person, especially if he's dressed nicely. He looks like an attorney who charges $600 an hour, right? Once he begins to talk, he says, "What? You know, where did he come from? Where did he land?" So, Mishnah Zayin discusses Shiv'at Dvarim B'Golem v'Shiv'at B'Chacham. There are certain things, 7 of them actually, that are apparent in someone who's a golem and someone who's a chacham. Now, we all know what a chacham is. Chacham is a wise person. So what is a golem? And it's a very interesting word because it's not a word that you come across too often. The chachamim use actually various other terms or adjectives, descriptions to describe human beings, depending on their level of finesse and knowledge. 2 things. Finesse, you know what I mean by finesse, right? And knowledge. At the very low end, you have somebody called a bur. You may have heard the term bur. Bur is like a bor. Bor is a well, a pit. It's empty. Bur is also a field that is fallow, not growing anything. So there are individuals in this world that are completely unrefined in their nature and totally not knowledgeable at all. So they lack the 2. They lack the finesse, they lack the knowledge, completely empty. Undeveloped. Then you have an amaretz. An amaretz is 1 step higher than a bur. He's somewhat refined. You know, he's not somebody totally unrefined. He's somewhat refined. He knows how to conduct himself. He knows how to behave more or less. But he's amaretz, he's worldly. He's like the amcha, as we say in Hebrew. He's from the people. He's not very knowledgeable. And that is one of the complaints you have with the jury system here in this country, is that you have people sitting in the jury that don't really know too much. They're not knowledgeable. They can't really make decisions. People go to vote. Do they really read what's in the ballot? Do they really know how to decide if this is something worth it or not worth it? You know, is it something good or not? They may not have the ability to make that decision. Not that they're not smart, they just simply lack the knowledge. You need knowledge to make a wise decision. So Am Haaretz is a little bit refined. He's the average person, but he's not very knowledgeable, not knowledgeable with, about everything that he should be knowledgeable about. Then you have a golem. A golem is a person who has potential, but it's like the word chomer gelem. He's raw. He's not refined in the area of. In other words, he is refined a little bit in both areas of behaving and knowledge, but he's not perfected yet. He's still lacking knowledge about certain things. So he's golem. Golem means unfinished. Raw. There's something there. He's getting there, but it's still unfinished. And then there is a chacham. A chacham is one who's pretty much achieved a certain finesse, a certain way of, he knows how to behave, how to conduct himself. He's knowledgeable about certain things. And he's basically elevated himself or developed himself in the various areas of life, conduct and knowledge. So here we find that a chacham, as opposed to a golem, has 7 characteristics, if we can call it that, where you can recognize the chacham, and he who does not have the 7 would, of course, be the opposite of the chacham, be the golem, be the unrefined person. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is what are those 7 things that make a chacham stand out over the golem. Of these 7, you will see that 4 of them are behavioral, that apply ben adam lachavero, how he conducts himself in public, how he conducts himself, how he relates to people. And the other 3 are more intellectual. In other words, they enable him to further develop. One who possesses these traits, they help him. They help him steadily progress and learn more and more and more. One who's lacking, of course, this would be an it would be an obstacle for him to progress. So the first item is a chacham eno medaber bifnei mishu gadol mimeno bechokma. A true chacham does not speak before someone who's greater than him bechokma. And I believe it says elsewhere, there's another version that says bifnei mishu gadol mimeno bechokma uminyan. Minyan, even though the word minyan means number, it would relate to experience. In other words, as we say in Hebrew, en chacham ki bala nisayon, a real chacham learns from experience. He may not be the wisest man, may not have learned the knowledge in school or in the yeshiva, but he does have experience. He has years, he has age. So a true chacham will not speak before someone who is greater than him in chokhmah, nishu gadol mimeno bechokhmah, or experience. What does that mean? We learned before in Pirkei Avot that syak lachokhmah shtika. Offense to chokhmah, to being a chacham, one needs to learn when to be silent, when not to talk, when not to respond, when not to comment, but to listen thoroughly, to listen well to what is being said. Then not only are we able to catch everything, but we're also able to understand better. Had we interrupted in the middle, had we said something too soon, things would not come out the same. So here we have a situation where a true chacham recognizes somebody who's smarter, somebody who's more knowledgeable, or has more experience, and therefore it allows him to first, he goes first to say what he has to say, before he interjects, before he gives his own opinion. This is, for several reasons, important. First of all, it's not nice. It's not nice to interrupt. It's not nice to say what you have to say before you give him, the chacham who's older or who's more knowledgeable, more experienced, to say what he has to say, to express his position about a certain matter. It's not nice. And plus, it makes more sense to hear the opinion of those who are more knowledgeable. So it's both. It's logical, more logical, and it's just more correct. It's nicer. It's more minanimus, as we say in Hebrew. It's more civilized to let the other individual who knows better, who's more experienced, be the first one to express his opinion. It happens many times that people want to say what they think about a particular situation, but depending on the circumstances, if there is a meeting of other people who are, several people are attending the meeting, many people are expressing their opinions, it would be wise to hear those who know better first than those who are not as knowledgeable. Now, what happens if somebody says something before the right time? In other words, before he lets the other individual first finish off what he's going to say. If it ends up being that he was going to say it anyway, then it looks foolish. Now, why didn't you wait? He was going to say that anyway. See what I mean? So he may end up looking like a fool for having, I know. Wait a minute. Let the speaker say what he has to say. He may cover that point. So it looks foolish. Plus, he may also get embarrassed if he says something which is totally not relevant to what is being discussed. So therefore, it's better to always listen first to what is being said by those who are experienced and knowledgeable, and then perhaps one can add if he has anything else to add. So this is a quality that you find in a Chacham. In other words, that he allows those who are knowledgeable to go before him. The next one, actually before we go to the next one, when we learned Mishlei, Shlomo Melech, who was a big Chacham, mentions in various Pesukim some of these ideas. Some of these ideas you will find all over the Torah, in the Tanakh, examples of personalities who actually conducted themselves in this way. Various incidents in the Torah that pretty much point these things out. In other words, here we're not just listing a bunch of virtues that the Chachamim agreed upon. No, these are actually seen in the Tanakh. And so Shlomo Melech, in one of the Pesukim Mishlei, says, Meshiv, Davar beterem yishma, ivelet lo uchlima. Pretty much what we just said. If one talks before he lets the other person say what he has to say, eventually it ends up being ivelet, foolish, and embarrassing. In other words, let things follow in the proper order. And the proper order in this case is let the individual who's supposed to be speaking speak first and speak fully what he has to say. Now the pasuk is davar be'ito ma tov. It's always a good idea to say something at the right time, not at the wrong time. There are many times we find ourselves in all kinds of situations, whether it's in the house of mourning, whether it's visiting the sick in the hospital. You have to know what to say. You have to know when to keep quiet, not to say the wrong thing. You have to be careful. You have to think through what you're going to say, that it should be pleasant, that it should be right, it should be relevant, it should be to the point, not just to talk for the sake of talking. So as he says, davar be'ito ma tov, when a person is able to talk about something that is very pertinent, it could be more effective too. Because, imagine it's Purim right now, and somebody wants to teach halachot of Hanukkah. Why teach the halachot of Hanukkah now? Now it's Purim. See, davar be'ito ma tov. If something is said in the right time, it's much more powerful. Tell your wife happy birthday when it's your birthday, or when it's somebody else's. And it's not her birthday. What are you going to say? Happy birthday? A happy anniversary? It's not the anniversary. It's not the right time to say it. But if you just had a good meal, it's a great meal. Don't say it later on. You could, but it's better at the right time. It's better. It's more well received, and perhaps it's more powerful at that point. So we have to know when to respond, when to say, and what to say. And that is true with any conversation. When people want to have a good conversation, you need tremendous amount of thought of how to deal with it, how to handle the conversation so that it doesn't get into a fight. What am I going to say? I don't want to hurt the person. I want to say the right thing. So it does require thought. What happens when people don't give too much thought to what they're saying, and they're supposed to be having a conversation, that conversation will end up being a meriva, a fight, a dispute. It wasn't intended. A lot of times it starts off innocently. I think this, I think that. And then they start arguing. Yeah, but it was your mother's fault. What does your mother have to do with this? But one thing leads to another. So, one of the ideas being expressed here is that in order to avoid a conversation becoming a dispute, a fight, an argument, let the other person say everything that he has to say. Let him say whatever's on his mind, whatever is on his heart. Let him talk. Don't talk before he finishes to say what he has to say. Also, it is not correct, and we'll talk a little bit about it a little bit later, it is not correct for a person to express an opinion about a subject matter that he's not knowledgeable in. If you're not knowledgeable in this area, if you do not know, then don't get involved. So it could be a situation where a person hears something and he may not know what to say. It's better that he keep quiet than to say things that are total nonsense. The next item is that a chacham eno nichnas letoch divrei chavero. He does not interrupt him. That is simple. That's just manners, good manners. You don't interrupt the person. You let him finish what he was saying. Sometimes the reason why people do that is because sometimes they think they know what the person is going to say. So they like to complete. Don't do him a favor of complete. Let him say what he wants to say. Perhaps he's so happy he wants to say something. Sometimes it happens all the time. It could be a child. It could be somebody who wants to give you the good news, and you already know the good news. Let him be happy. Let him tell it to you as though you never knew it. Let him have that good feeling that he just told you something you didn't know. Right? This happens all the time. You already know. You don't know. You already know the answer to the question. You already know what the plan is. You already know about this piece of news. Make believe you don't know. Because, Chachamim tell us it's just, it could be he won't mind, but many times you actually give him a good feeling when he feels as though he just revealed something to you that he didn't know. And many times we think we know what he's going to say, and it ends up not being true. He actually had in mind something else to say. So it's always better not to interrupt, to let him say what he has to say, let him finish saying what he needed to say. Next. Ve'eno nivhal le'ashiv. Now here, the people can be mistaken with the modern Hebrew word nivhal and the word that's used in the Lashon HaMishnah. They're both from Lashon HaKodesh, obviously. Nivhal today in modern Hebrew means that he's not afraid, he's not fearful. Nihu nivhal. In other words, he got scared. Here, nivhal means like the word nechpaz. He doesn't rush. And no nivhal le'ashiv, a chacham does not rush to answer. He takes his time, he evaluates the question, he evaluates the topic, whatever is being discussed. He thinks about it and then answers. It's important to hear well, to digest what is being said before we answer. Why would somebody rush to answer? In other words, what makes somebody the opposite of a chacham not think about a situation and rush to answer? Isn't that something so simple? Listen, evaluate, digest it, think about it, and then answer. Now, why would somebody not do that? So psychologically, there's a lot of psychology here. Psychologically, a person, when he answers back, he is motivated to destroy, lehafrich, to undo, to to show how what the guy is saying is so baseless. That's all his motivation. That's all he's being motivated to do. He's not really trying to give his opinion, not trying to say, well, I think differently, or I know I've heard of this. His whole motivation here is to basically, destroy that guy's argument. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Whether it's intentional or not, to humiliate or not, it's a certain type of personality, a certain type of individual who is uncomfortable with letting the other individual just basically get away with it. He wants to prove it to him. Now you don't know what you're talking about. No, it's not so. Did you think about it? Did you analyze what I just said? Did you study it? Did you look it up? Have you thought about it? See, what's driving him to answer or to deal with the question or to deal with the remark? What's driving him is not an intellectual pursuit. It's not the truth. It's just to destroy that other individual, not the individual himself, but his opinion, his ideas. And that's why he would rush. That would be one reason why he would rush to basically attack what is being said. Wait a minute. Listen to what he has to say. Think about it. Maybe it's true. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Maybe you'll agree with it even. What's another reason that somebody might interfere, not let the other person finish? Also psychological. Another problem is, or another weakness that certain people have, is that they want to show off how much they know. So therefore, they don't even let him finish. They said a couple, whoa, I know. No. Wait a minute. Let him finish. No, but they want to show how much of a chacham they are, so that gets in the way. It doesn't. You can't have the two. In other words, a true chacham is interested in chokhmah. He's interested in hearing a good dvar Torah. He's interested in hearing something that is beautiful, a halakha, or an opinion. Here, this man is not a chacham. So what's motivating him? He wants to show that he is a chacham, or he wants to, like we said before, destroy that other person's ideas. He doesn't want to accept them just for the sake of arguing, not really pursuing the emet or the chokhmah. This kind of attitude, of course, if a person is not a chacham and he has this attitude of either showing that he's a chacham or he wants to basically bash, as they say in English, he's interested in bashing the other person's ideas, this leads to endless arguments instead of arriving at a good proposal, a good idea on how to deal with a certain problem, a certain situation. When you have people who are interested in really coming up with the best idea and best approach to deal with a problem, then they join forces, they exchange ideas, they do it calmly, they listen to each other. That's done with chokhmah. And obviously, if it's done l'shem shamayim, then you have siyata d'shmaya too, you have the help of Hashem. But when it's just l'nageach, as we say in Hebrew, just to attack, just to insult, just to show off, then it doesn't lead to anything. On the contrary, it's just endless arguments, and no good comes out of it. The next detail is shoel ka'inyan u'meshiv ka'halacha. Also, this is quite prevalent. You find this a lot in schools, in the class, that sometimes a teacher is talking about the history of the United States, of America. The student raises his hand and asks him a question about Mickey Mouse. Or actually, no, Mickey Mouse is not a good example. About, oh, did you hear about what happened with this science project? But we're studying American history now, right? Somebody's studying Chumash, and the student raises this question and asks the rabbi, yeah, but what do you say about this and this item in the halakha, was in such and such halakha. We're not learning halakha now, right? We're learning chumash. So it's important to be shoel kainyan. Now, why is that so important? Why can't you just ask another question? It's a valid question. It's an innocent question. First of all, the rabbi or the teacher may not be focused in that area. He may not recall now. He's dealing with another area right now where he's concentrating on. So it's not fair to the teacher and to the students too, if there are others listening, to be distracted. And you should know that this does happen a lot with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara tries to get people to talk about, especially when the topic is Torah, is to talk about another topic, to get away. If that other topic is not Torah, it's for sure the Yetzer Hara. If that other topic is Torah, then at least one can learn something from it, depending on how it is presented. But Shoel Kainyan, a Chacham, asks to the point. Doesn't ask about another topic. Okay, so here we can also ask psychologically, why would somebody do that? Besides the Yetzer Hara, that's not always the case. Why would somebody just pick on something that totally is not what is being discussed? You have any idea why would somebody want to do that? We're learning one topic. Why would somebody? And this, by the way, happens in lectures too. All of a sudden, so what do you think, Rabbi, about China? What does that have to do with the shiur? Right? So what do you say? What's psychologically driving this person to talk about something that is totally not relevant? Well, you could say he's not a chacham. That's the easy answer. But psychologically, usually there are people who like to ask questions just for the sake of asking questions, not because they want an answer. They want to be heard. They want attention. So then whatever comes to their mind. They don't have a real question about what is being discussed, but they want to be heard. They want attention. So what do you think about this? What does that have to do with this? Right? So that's, if you ever wonder why people would do that, that's the reason why they do it. Yeah. Sometimes they just want to argue. They're in the mood of that. Not because they really want an answer to their question. Yeah, stop, just to ask questions. Meshiv kalacha is also very important. So when you are asked a question, the Chacham answers to the point. Have you ever heard people answering a question with a question? That's not the Chacham way. They say that's the Jewish way. In English, they say don't beat around the bush, and they say get to the point. All of you have heard of these terms, right? Yeah? Is there something like that in Farsi too? I'm sure. I gotta think of it. Huh? Get to the point, right? Don't beat around the bush. Talk about all kinds of shtuyot, of nonsense. Get to the point. Don't answer a question with a question. If you're a chacham, you're knowledgeable, then say what needs to be said. What happens if you don't know? We'll get to that next. But if you do know, then it helps clarity. It's simple. Clarity is one of the things that will be gained in the discussion, in the class, in whatever is being learned. Go to the point. Don't go around the bush, as they say. So that's what it means. Meshiv kahalacha. He's a chacham. So the chokhmah in him, the true chokhmah, enables him to go directly to the point. If he's not a chacham, then you understand why he's not going to the point. He's trying to, he wants to impress you, but he's not a chacham. If he knows he's a chacham, he'll go straight to the point and answer properly. Ve'omer al rishon rishon v'al acharon acharon. Okay, this is also seen in Tanakh in various examples. All of these are seen in examples of Tanakh. Whether it's in the question of Eliezer asking Rivka, who are you, and do you have place for us to sleep tonight? So that's two questions, right? So what do you think? She's going to say first, well, we have place for you to sleep. No, she first answers his first question. Who she is, right? The daughter of Betuel, right? And then she says, we have room, and you're welcome to stay. And one question is answered by every question is answered according to the right order. That shows, that is important, first of all, because you want the thoughts to be well organized. If there are many questions and you're going to tackle question number 3 before question number 1, it's just not organized. Organization is important in life, we all know that. And here we're talking about organization of the thoughts, of the mind. We want people to be able to understand well what is being said, so the flow is important. It's important that the flow be right. There are people who are just very confused. Everything mumbled and jumbled. They throw things at you without any particular order. That doesn't show chokhmah. It may not be his fault. We're not blaming anybody here for not being a chacham. He may be a golem still, but he should strive for this. In other words, this is something that is proper. That one should tackle question number 1 first, then question number 2 second. It's more proper, and it's just healthier that way. ועל מה שלא שמר אומר לא שמעתי. Very, very important point over here. These last 2 points, as we're going to see, are very, very important. Whatever he did not hear, there are times that a chacham is asked about something that he does not know. He says, Lo shamati, I did not hear. I don't know the answer to it. You know how difficult it is for some people to do that? For some people to say, Lo shamati and lo yodea? They think it's embarrassing to say that. It's not embarrassing at all. It shows that you're a chacham. That what you don't know, you admit that you don't know. But this has a double significance. When this was written, in the time of the Mishnayot, and later the Gemara, it was very, very important to know when a rabbi was saying something, how do you know this? Remember, the Torah was being transmitted orally for many, many years until it was written down. Did you say what you just say by tradition? You were taught that, and your rabbi said that because he has that tradition from his rabbi? Or is this being said mitoch svara? Is this being said because that's your opinion, based on, of course, what you read, what you learned? The difference between those two is immense. If it's svara, if it's an opinion, a personal opinion, then people can argue with you. People can say, you know what, I don't agree. I disagree. I have a different opinion than you. And I can, of course, try to prove or substantiate what I'm saying by bringing proof to that. But the moment the rabbi says, it's not my personal opinion, this is the way I was taught, this is the way I learned, this is the way that my rabbi gave it over to me, you cannot argue with that. That's part of the Masoret. Very important that people have the proper respect to the Masoret. You just can't argue with the Masoret. You can't argue with the Rishonim, for example. The Rishonim are many, many generations before us. They had Ruach HaKodesh. What they knew was very close to Sinai. They have a very strong tradition. And many, many times what they said, even if it was an opinion, was based on tremendous sources. Who are we? Nitkatnu hadorot, the rabbis tell us. The generations have become smaller, weaker. We don't have the mental faculties of those generations. How could we dare argue with them? With people in our own generation, very knowledgeable rabbis, if you have an opposing opinion and you can back it up, not just to oppose is easy, but you can back it up, then that's possible. You are entitled to do so, as long as you back it up. Anytime a person wants to oppose and come up with another opinion, and we have two opinions, just back it up. And as long as your opinion does not contradict an already established tenet, then you have the right to give an opinion. Shivim panim b'Torah. There are times where more than one interpretation is accepted, and they're all emet. Even though ultimately one is the halakha, it doesn't mean the other ones are not emet. Emet and halakha are not exactly the exact same thing. The halakha is what we follow right now, for whatever reason. Hillel and Shammai, the two are knowledgeable, the two are great scholars, the two are great schools of thought. Bet Shammai said this is halakha, Bet Hillel said this is halakha. It doesn't mean that one is not right. They both are right. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. They both are the words of God. but only one is applicable at any given time. So there's a tradition that when Mashiach comes, the halacha will go back like Bet Shammai, even though the halacha many times today is like Bet Hillel, more lenient. But they both are truth. So you want to oppose an opinion, back it up, and obviously it has to be substantiated. It cannot contradict something already established in the Torah. And then it could be acceptable. So, if a person does not know, he's always better off saying, Lo shamati. Rabbis tell us, Le'olam yargil adam et atzmo lomar eni yodea. It's always a good midah for a person to get used to saying, I don't know. It is more humble to say that. Rabbis tell us that the Torah does not reside in a person who's arrogant, thinks he knows it all. We don't know it all. And acknowledging that you don't know is a form of humbleness. There is an individual who's very stubborn, who has a hard time admitting his mistakes. Why? Because he doesn't want to be embarrassed. He thinks that if he says, I don't know, it's more embarrassing. But the rabbis are telling us, Lema'aseh, what is more embarrassing is when a person is stubborn and eventually it is found out that he didn't know what he was talking about. That will be more embarrassing than had you said you don't know. But the one who's not a chacham does not think like that. You see how important it is to learn the words of the chachamim, to adapt all these things in our life, because they're telling us it's better that you say you don't know than to eventually be found out that you didn't know. So why be stubborn about it now? Eventually it will be discovered. And that will be much more embarrassing. So say now that you don't know. It happens in discussions about religion too. Faith. There are people who tell you, I don't believe. You know, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in all kinds of things. And I tell them, you can't say that. What do you mean I can't say that? You can't say you don't believe. Have you studied religion? Have you come to that conclusion? Or are you just saying that you don't accept it because you don't want to accept it? If a person is not convinced of a subject matter, if he's not convinced of the truth or veracity of something, he could be called an agnostic and say, I'm not convinced. But you know what? Maybe one day you will convince me. That sounds much better than saying, I don't believe. You don't believe. Then why don't you study so maybe one of these days you will believe? By saying a person says, I don't believe, he's ruling it out. I don't believe, I don't accept this. Have you looked into it? Have you done an in-depth analysis and study of this subject matter? And I find this a lot with astrology. It's very funny. People tell me, I don't believe in astrology. I say, have you studied it? No, I just don't believe it. Then how could you say you don't believe it? You can tell me I'm not convinced, I'm not sure, I don't know. But you can't say I don't believe. To say I don't believe means you know something, you've heard about it, you read about it, and you don't accept it. But you haven't done it, you haven't studied it, how could you say you don't believe? It's the wrong approach. It shows total ignorance. It's embarrassing, I think. How could you say you don't believe something when you didn't study it? You can say, I am not convinced. Rabbis tell us about another idea that is similar. Once somebody was asked, do you put on tefillin? And he said, no. Well, at least he gets credit for saying the truth. But the rabbi told him, no, don't say that. Say not yet. Mm-hmm. You put on tefillin? Not yet. Why? Because when a person says no, he's already rejected it. His no rejects it. It's strong. When a person says not yet, that means at least he understands that it has value. Maybe one of these days he will accept it. I think that's a beautiful idea. And I use it sometimes with people. You keep Shabbat? He says, don't tell me no, not yet. Not yet. I know you're not there yet, but not yet. One of these days maybe. So he says to me, yeah, I guess maybe one of these days. You see, I saved him. Had he said, no, get him out of this no is much more difficult than get him to admit, well, maybe depends who he marries. Yeah, a lot of times it depends on that. Umodeh al ha'emet. So that's what we're talking about right now. Al ma shelo shama, what he does not know, he says, I didn't hear. And when it comes to the truth, he admits the truth. What does that mean? What's modeh al ha'emet? Modeh al ha'emet, we come across it in various ways. One of them is criticism. Person is being criticized for having made a mistake, for having done something wrong. You know what? Admit it. For some people, for those who are not chachamim, it's hard to hear criticism. There's a pasuk in Mishlei, let me see if I wrote it down here. Yeah, something like, Al tochach letz, pen yisnaeka ocheach lechacham v'yehaveka. Approximately those are the words. Mishlei tells us, don't rebuke, don't criticize the letz, the mocker, the one that likes to make fun of everything. It's a waste of your time. He's going to hate you. He's going to yell back. Rebuke the chacham and he will love you for it. Why will he love you for it? Because modeh, the word modeh in Lashon HaKodesh means two things. It means to admit, and it means also to thank. Lehodot. A chacham not only admits his faults, he's thankful, he's grateful for you having pointed out something that's wrong. He always wants to correct himself. He always wants to improve a situation. He always wants to learn. So therefore he will be thankful for you. He'll love you for it. So here, what a difference between the letz and the chacham. Chacham wants to know the truth. He will love you for it. He will accept it. Chacham does not have any fear of finding out the truth. There are people who, believe it or not, psychologically, emotionally, live in fantasy land. And they prefer to live in that kind of a world of imagination and fantasies. They're not practical, they're not grounded. And that is why the rabbis used to tell us something very, very powerful about those who refuse to acknowledge the truth, who don't want to know the truth. It's not that they don't see it, it's that ha'emet hikveda v'lachen nosea ha'muatim. Truth is heavy, and that is why few people are willing to bear it, to carry it. It means you need to commit yourself. If someone admits that the Torah is emet, the mitzvot are emet, Hashem emet, then he has to begin to live his life according to the Torah. That's too much for him. He has to commit to it. Emet requires responsibilities, commitment. It's heavy. Ha'emet kveda. So people find it heavy or difficult, therefore, to admit that this is the truth. Therefore, they'd rather rule it out. Oh, it's not possible. As many scientists, non-Jewish, and unfortunately some Jewish secular scientists have said, oh, God created the world, that's impossible. That's too fantastic. It's an impossible thing. For them, Big Bang is more possible. Evolution is more possible, which statistically is totally impossible. But God? Oh, no, that's totally not possible. You don't rule out anything. If you're a scientist and you just say you don't know. This cannot be scientifically proven. That's a much better answer. That's the correct answer, because science cannot prove. Even though there's enough evidence that there is harmony and design in creation, we have evidence. It's indirect evidence, but it's evidence nonetheless. But one who does not want to believe, who does not want to emet, he doesn't want it. So he rules it out, he throws it out, no, this is not possible. I don't want to know about it, I don't want to hear about it, because that's not acceptable. You want to talk about all the theories, and there are theories, of course. Yes, I'm willing to listen to even the most fanciful theories you can have, And asking, well, what came before the Big Bang? Well, there's no answer to that. So, whatever they say, of course, is totally nonsense. It doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. But why do they say it? because that's better than accepting God. You see? So emet is heavy, too difficult for them. So therefore, the tipesh, the fool, will refuse to hear criticism, and the chacham will accept it, will welcome it. Just to finish up, the rabbis tell us, we're dealing now with emet, that there are various groups that do not see the Pnei HaShekhinah when they head upstairs. One cat, one group that does not get to see the Pnei HaShekhinah is kat shel shakranim, the group of liars. In other words, they lie themselves through life. They went through life lying, whether it's lying in business, lying to their wife, to their spouse, liars. The midah of sheker is very destructive, the rabbis tell us. And because it's destructive to a person's emunah, to a person's conduct in life, he doesn't get to see the Shekhinah upstairs. So the question is, what does one thing have to do with another? I mean, he didn't do anything chas v'shalom. I mean, he didn't kill anybody. Why should kat shel shakranim not see the Shekhinah? When a person, the commentaries tell us that when a person meshaker, he's not lying only to others, he's lying to himself, obviously. When a person is a liar, a real pathological, I guess, liar, a real liar, he does not permit himself, does not give himself the chance of having the Shekhinah reside in his home. In other words, by lying, you're not letting the Shekhinah into your life. How is a person ever going to do teshuvah if he's a liar, if he denies everything? It's such a terrible midah. It's so far from the emet. It's exact opposite of emet. So a person with that midah, in a very, very heavy way, in other words, that his whole life is about sheker, will not have the Shekhinah in his life while he's alive. How do you expect that he will be able to receive the Shekhinah when he heads upstairs? So that's the idea behind this, that sheker is one of the most destructive midot that basically alienate a person from Torah mitzvot, from the Shekhinah. And finally, the Mishnah ends with the words v'chilufehen b'golem. So all of these 7 midot, 7 characteristics that we say that apply to Chacham, the lack of them, of the absence of them, chilufehen, you will find in a golem. So instead of listing all of them, which the rabbis prefer not to mention negative traits, let's focus on the positive traits. So they leave out the negative. All it tells us is chilufehen. The opposite of these traits you will find in a golem. So if you find somebody who has the opposite of these, you know that there's something unfinished about him. And this could be with many people. I mean, maybe there's somewhat a little bit of chachamim here and there, but if they interrupt, if they don't always admit the truth, if they're not organized in their thoughts, right? All of the things that we mentioned, that's golem. In other words, in Yiddish they use the word a goylem. He's a goylem, meaning to say he's just a unrefined person, just a plain as it gets. And what a shame! You have diamonds out there that are not polished. Once you polish a diamond, it looks so much beautiful. People have potential, but if they don't learn what needs to be polished, they don't even realize how different they could be, how their life could shine a lot more than if it would be left unpolished. What I wanted to add to this Mishnah is this last point of emet is very, very, very significant in our life. Here we were talking about emet being a characteristic that is helpful in discussions, in learning, in criticism. It shows refinedness. It shows that a person is really a chacham because he's interested with the truth. He doesn't want sheker. He doesn't want fantasy. But emet is also very, very valuable in our life in a different way. People make mistakes in life. And some of these mistakes, David HaMelech tells us in Tehillim, shegiot mi yavin, ministarot nakeni. You may have heard that pasuk. We don't know why we make mistakes. That's the meaning of those words. Shegiot mi yavin. Those are the mistakes that we're not culpable of. In other words, we're not always responsible. We made a mistake. We didn't realize we should have done this, not that. That could be b'dei shamayim, because as the pasuk says, "Shegiot mi yavin." Why did I have to make such a mistake? But there are mistakes that we are guilty of, that we are responsible of, because we didn't study. We therefore acted wrongly. We therefore spoke not in a nice way. So those things that we, of course, later on we take back and we feel bad that we did it, those are mistakes for which we have to take responsibility for. So when a person comes to terms with that, because he's emet, he's a truthful man, he will recognize those mistakes, whether it was mistakes at home with the shalom bayit or elsewhere, and he will basically recognize the mistakes and take action to correct them. Recognizing those mistakes, therefore, which only comes from a sense of being amiti, being truthful, is so important, because otherwise you can't continue in life. When a person, they tell me, that when a person has been abused, when a person has had trouble in the past, in his upbringing, in his childhood, when things were done to him, they say that it's important for him somehow to come to terms with it so he can continue his life in a healthy manner. He should not be stuck in the past. In order to progress, in order to get out of it, you need to come to terms with it. Coming to terms with something means understanding what has happened. And understanding what has happened means facing it without any fear and realizing what it is for what it is. And that's it. And hypnotists use that strategy too, to bring a person back to where he was at some point in his life, which is bothering him, which is there, and which is buried deep down in the recesses of the soul, and he can't get it out of him. It's in his back of his mind. It's always on his. Come on, go on with your life. It's easy to say. Apparently, in Baruch Hashem, I haven't seen this personally, but it exists. Apparently, you can't tell somebody just easily, go on with your life as though nothing happened. You got to deal with it. And part of dealing with it is modeh al emet. Modeh al emet meaning not only being truthful, but acknowledging it. Yes, this happened. Okay, now what? Well, let's try to understand it. What exactly happened? What is it? What does it mean? Right? Not being shy, not being fearful of it, but dealing with it. And when a person deals with the problem in the proper way, of course, with the proper hashkafa from the Torah, then he's able to continue living his life normally. So it's not impossible for a person who went through, experienced any kind of trauma, unless perhaps the Holocaust, it could be nightmares coming back in the dreams, maybe things that you cannot control. But there are many, many things that may have happened that we can't control. What it requires a certain strength, and of course of emunah, in a certain dose of bitachon b'Hashem will help. All of these things are helpful, but it's also important that he should be able to face it without being afraid of it. And in order for that, it's important that he have the midah called emet. Be truthful. Don't shy away, don't ignore, deal with it, so you can continue to live your life in a normal way. Rabbis tell us that the emet is the seal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the seal of Hashem. What's the seal? I mean, the seal of approval, right? The seal is the emblem, the insignia of Hashem. The whole world is all about emet. Anything less than emet does not belong with Hashem. That's how powerful emet. Emet, if you're with emet, you're with Hashem. Without emet, then you're not wearing Hashem's uniform. You're not wearing His seal. You don't have anything that belongs to Hashem. You want to belong to Hashem, you have to put on His seal, His stamp, His uniform, right? And then you belong to Hashem. And that is why David HaMelech tells us a very powerful pasuk. It's one of my favorite pasukim. Mi yagur be'aolecha, mi yishkom behar kodshecha. David HaMelech says, who will live with you? Who will reside with you? It says, an individual who's olech tamim, ufoel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. Olech tamim, that means he walks faithfully in your ways. He's faithful, he's trustful, he's tamim, he's complete in his emunah. Ufoel tzedek, he's righteous, he does acts of goodness, he's kind. V'dover emet bilvavo, and he always speaks the truth in his heart. Bilvavo, that's interesting. You talk the truth in your heart? What does that mean? I just thought about it. What does it mean, bilvavo? It's not just to verbalize the truth, it's not only to admit the truth. The very event bilvavo, the rabbis tell us there were people who thought of doing something, they only thought about it. They don't have to do it just because they thought about it. No. If you thought about doing something good, then do it. Imagine you had in mind to give somebody $10 tzedakah. Then you see him, I'm just going to give him 5. But you thought of giving 10. You had a good thought. Then be truthful to your thoughts. You see what I mean? Dover emet bilvavo means whatever you promise, you deliver, you carry out. Because a promise is also from what you intended to do. So it's not just about talking the truth. It's not just about admitting. It's about living a life of truth in everything that we do. That we do not deny, that we admit, that we deliver what we promise, we carry out what we intended to do. That's what we call in English integrity. A man has integrity, meaning that everything that he does is emet. And of course, this midah, of all the midot that the Chacham has, I think this one is the greatest of all. Commentaries tell us, therefore, don't think, when it says chilufehem bagolem, that the opposite of the Chacham is Negolem. Don't think why do they tell us that the opposite is Negolem? Because don't think that these are optional. You have a cake, sweet cake, now you want it better, you can put icing on it, and a strawberry, right? All kinds of kishutim, we call it, adornments. Don't think that these midot are adornments, decorations. You want to be a better looking person, a nicer person, a greater knowledgeable person, then make sure you adapt these characteristics. You have no choice. If you don't have these, we're dealing with a golem. These are not optional. This can make a world of a difference between a chacham and a golem. So therefore, if a person wants to develop himself properly in chokhmah, in knowledge, as well as in proper behavior, ben adam lechavero, to conduct himself in the right way, one needs to adapt these 7 midot.